This advanced driving technique is one of the reasons advanced and pro drivers are faster in turns. It's called trail braking. Trail braking is accomplished by gradually reducing brake pressure and adding steering while entering a corner. The advantages of trail braking is the ability to use more tire grip mid-corner, smoother weight transfer, and ultimately a faster car rotation into the turn. The faster we complete the car's rotation, the sooner we can accelerate out of the turn, because throughout a lap, the ultimate goal is to spend less time braking and more time accelerating. For novice drivers in high-performance driving classes, whether on track or in the classroom, this technique is not being taught yet. But on the advanced level, this driving technique is a must to know if you want to be fast. The steps are as follows. Brake with maximum intensity, also known as threshold braking. Right before your turning point, start easing off the brake pedal and start adding steering input while looking ahead to the apex. Continue adding steering angle until you reach the apex, but at the same time, gradually reduce the brake pressure as you're turning. Right before the apex or at the apex, transition to acceleration. This is a typical slow turn that requires trail braking to properly optimize it. The black line represents acceleration. The red line represents the braking zone. So far, nothing different than what a novice driver is doing. But at the end of the braking zone, you'll notice that the path becomes more of a spiral, which means that the rotation is faster. This is represented by the orange color. Basically, you'll be able to point the car in the right direction much faster. As soon as the car is pointed properly, the acceleration can begin. This is a circle representation of the grip level. The typical novice driver brakes in a straight line, then releases the brake pedal completely, turns to the apex, and at the apex, they're applying throttle while unwinding the steering wheel. As you can see, somewhere in the middle of the turn, very little of the tire's total grip level is being used. The cornering force is slightly higher than the centrifugal force and the car's momentum because the tire's friction level is nowhere near optimal. In simpler words, you will not feel as much G's ripping you out of the car. On the other hand, an advanced driver using trail braking technique is able to initiate a much higher cornering force and is able to use up all the available grip or friction level offered by the tires. Once the centrifugal force and the car's momentum overcomes the cornering forces of the car, you are basically understeering, oversteering, or just sliding, so to speak, which will always be slower than staying right at the limit. So your main goal while trail braking is to increase your cornering forces while maintaining a very high centrifugal force and car's momentum. Trail braking helps balancing the weight transfer of the car. When we brake, the car takes a dive, which means that most of the car's weight is being transferred to the front tires. With the weight on the front axle, the tires are experiencing a vertical force which, with the help of the suspension and aerodynamic devices, is basically pushing the tire into the tarmac that will ultimately generate more friction level or grip level. While you are trail braking, you are essentially controlling the weight of the car more precisely by smoothly shifting the weight of the car where you need it more, towards the outside of the turn and gradually to the rear, because by the time you complete your rotation, you want the weight on the rear axis so you can have more available grip for acceleration. Now that you understand how trail braking works, the biggest question is, how do we actually practice this technique? Trail braking will not work if your momentum or entry speed is not high enough because you will overslow even more and complete the rotation slower. In other words, if you want to start practicing trail braking, you will have to approach the turn slightly faster, which typically means you have to start braking a bit later. But if your braking point is at the 300-yard marker, don't just start braking at the 100-yard marker all of a sudden. Move up your braking point a car length at a time until you master trail braking in that particular turn, then fine-tune your brake release and your steering input. If you are trail braking and you find yourself understeering, apply more braking. If you start oversteering, release the brake more to transfer more weight to the rear axle. You can correct this from lap to lap until you find the perfect balance. It will also help tremendously both on the confidence level and from the safety standpoint if you pick a very slow speed turn with a lot of runoff or gravel traps. These are typically turns that are followed by long straights. As you keep moving up the braking point, you will inherently feel the need to slow the car down more and faster. That's where you will feel the need to trail brake. Most time it even happens subconsciously. Sure, there might be situations where you might lock up a bit here and there, but don't get discouraged. Keep practicing until you get the hang of it and finally master this technique. Instead of panicking when approaching the turn a bit faster, always keep telling yourself, release and turn, release and turn. This way, it slowly becomes second nature. Now let's look at some data. It was a bit harder for me to find a trail braking versus non-trail braking lap with similar cars, driver, and conditions, but I found something arguably better. Here is an example of trail braking in one of our endurance races, 3 laps apart, so same driver, same car, and very similar track conditions. What we will be analyzing is actually good trail braking versus slightly worse trail braking. This is turn 1 at VIR, which is a slow turn followed by a long straight. We are mainly focusing in the area between the turn-in point and the apex. As you can see, right before the turn-in, both laps are starting off with almost no delta time. Actually, only about 0.005 of a second difference. Now you can see the graph is slightly curving, which indicates trail braking. If it would have been looking more like a sharp V, it means there is no trail braking present. You can see that the car is slowing down less, but the lateral Gs are increasing significantly. This is a good indicator of trail braking. On both laps, the cars exceed 1 G, which is decent for those particular street tires we were using. Yes, the driver is slightly overslowing on the red lap, but here is the crucial point that indicates better trail braking. The red lap, right in this moment before the apex, is pulling an additional 0.1 lateral Gs versus the blue lap, and as an outcome, the red lap just in that trail braking portion alone becomes 0.02 of a second faster. If the driver would have gotten on throttle slightly sooner, those 0.02 of a second would have been transitioned in much more time gained at the exit of the turn. This is just a very small and easy example on how to evaluate your trail braking data. Accompanied by video footage, there can be a lot of learning potential just by trial and error until you get it right and you become consistent and master this technique. You can always go back and watch the videos where you were performing your best trail braking on that particular turn. I suggest only practicing a turn at a time while you get used to this technique and you are happy with the overall outcome, which is rotating the car much faster, carrying more speed throughout the turn, and getting on throttle right before the apex. Turns that require trail braking are usually slow turns that require a car rotation higher than 90 degrees. Do not trail brake in turns where you are traveling with high speeds or turns that require very little car rotation. Here is a representation of brake pressure for fast turns versus slow turns where trail braking is required. As you can see, in fast turns, we are just brushing the brake enough to scrape off a couple miles an hour and get a bit of front grip for turning, versus slow turns where we threshold brake and trail brake in order to optimize the turn. If you want to get better at threshold braking, go ahead and watch this video if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, keep the shiny side up.